This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
You know, every once in a while, we get a weekend or even a long weekend. Like this one as we edge toward the end, the back nine, the final hole. Why is it always golf metaphors with me of the summer? That's where my head's at. Welcome, everybody. But there's an episode, or at least there's a stretch of time every once in a while where something happens, or maybe it's in the news cycle, and we sit here, John and I, and we just chomp at the bit, waiting for our next episode because things are happening, and that's exactly the case, and that's exactly where we'll lead off in this episode of the show. Welcome here. Grateful to have you with us. Dr. Alex Rivard in just a second from Athabasca University, a political science prof whose career's work really focuses on public opinion toward housing and Canadian politics. And we're going to get into both of those subjects, obviously intertwined to a certain degree in this episode. In just a second, and a little bit later on, we'll at length discuss Mark Carney kind of dropping his elbows. The elbows are down a little bit now as Canada has, and if you've been reading about this in the news and you've been paying attention to the coverage, the verb that in particular opinion columnists have been invoking is retreat, as Mark Carney retreats from reciprocal tariffs aimed at the United States. This in an effort, obviously, to negotiate better deals for Canadians, for Canadian exporters, for American consumers. I don't have to explain that to this audience. But also, of course, leading up to that big renewal date, 2026 is where CUSMA, this, everybody talks about, NAFTA and the USMCA, and it's operated under a number of different terms over the past while, a number of different acronyms, but this is essentially the free trade deal between Canada, the United States, and Mexico, and it's up for renewal, and it will be President Donald Trump and his administration that Canada is negotiating with, and this is the big one. Even folks that are either Carney supporters or at least objectively giving Carney the benefit of the doubt beyond his first several months as prime minister to get this figured out are pointing to the CUSMA renewal, that extension of those terms, those trade terms, as kind of when it has to happen. Sure, maybe there hasn't been free trade in Canada by July 1st, by Canada Day, like the Prime Minister originally promised on election night, and then kind of walked back a little bit and explained. And sure, there's not been a significant drop in tariffs since Carney was elected Prime Minister at the end of April. In fact, a lot of the tariffs have gone up. If you're working in steel and aluminum, you've seen your tariffs skyrocket. You've also seen the American government take an interest in U.S. steel production, which is kind of an interesting twist as well. But there's no denying, regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum, that the renewal of that free trade agreement, that North American free trade agreement, is the mile marker where Mark Carney's got to be firing on all cylinders. And so this government, Canada's government, the federal government, has taken a different tone, walking back reciprocal tariffs. And conservatives, though that's what they've been calling for the entire time, are pretty pissed off about it because they feel like, in particular, Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith was treated unfairly through all of this. This is what she advocated for the entire time. And what did it earn her? Well, it earned her the traitor badge. That's what a lot of people were calling her. They were saying that she wasn't standing up for Canada. So we want to ask Dr. Rivard about that. And I also want to get to our Real Talk live chat. We'll solicit your emails as well to talk@ryanjesperson.com. So that's where we will go. There's also a new report that we'll touch on in this episode that basically calls for a complete rethink of how Canada deals with China, and we'll get into that. But it's Infill where we lead. On our most recent episode of the show, that was the 22nd of August, it was the return of the group chat roundtable. And if you're familiar with the group chat roundtable on this show, you know that it's real friends of mine. It's a real life group chat, a political group chat for the most part that unfolds in the privacy of our phones nearly every single day. And a couple of times a year, we bring it onto the show, and you get pretty much the same tone. You get pretty much the same candor. You get pretty much the same conviction. And every once in a while, you definitely get the same fieriness. And that's what unfolded on Friday between Harman Candola, who we're pretty sure is going to be a city council candidate, though he hasn't officially launched his campaign yet. We get into that in the show with a little bit of fun on that, Johnny.
He did as of this morning.
As of this morning,
so I see
when I was driving in, the astute and plugged-in producer of this program did notice a change to the bio, where he has now officially confirmed on his bio that he's a city council candidate. So, but check this out. So he retweets his most recent post. He retweeted our highlight from Friday. Now, if you're trying to take something back, or if you're trying to walk something back, if you feel bad about something, or if you feel like something's going to damage your chances of getting elected, for example, you're not going to retweet it, right? So he did, and Harman and Jenny Adams, who's a strategist and she's a political advisor. And obviously pretty plugged in. Her track record tells the tale, pretty plugged in into, I think, what voters are looking for and what's going to resonate. So they kind of get into it. And I know that those of you that listen, some of you that join our live stream early on YouTube and all the social media platforms, that's California Closets that presents the Real Talk live stream. You hear what we call the pre-roll. So John compiles, puts together, it's a journalistic jambalaya of sorts, John. Every week, Johnny takes our shorts, like our highlights, basically our best moments, boiled down to 60 seconds per. And if you're on our live stream prior to 8:30 Mountain, 10:30 Eastern, you get to sort of get a recap of who we had on the show in the last week. If you're joining us live at 8:30, if you're joining us later, you'll never see the pre-roll. It's a little bit of a carrot to entice you to join us a little bit early. And so you, on the pre-roll, saw that exchange. We're going to play it again in just a second. For those of you that are listening to the podcast, for those of you that are going to check this out on YouTube either a day later or maybe a year later, we don't know. But let me just say this. This moment, this interaction in the show, and by the way, it was like 45 minutes into the show, right? Like, it's not like we led with it. Like, it's not like this was the big thing that we were going to hit them with out of the gates. It was more of a hangout, right? On like a Friday afternoon, Catherine O'Neill joins us, talks to us about her hike at Lake O'Hara. We're kind of easing into the political stories, getting into this, that, and the other. And then Harman basically says, infill is not an election issue. And then all hell breaks loose. So before I get into it, share some thoughts. Before we get to Dr. Rivard, who has experience in subject matter like this, before we get to the tale of a real talker who shared a remarkable circumstance with us, and I'm not saying that in a good way. Like, I don't care where you land on Infill, you got to try to walk a mile in this guy's shoes. This guy and his family, we're not going to name him at his request, but we're going to show you, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching us on the social media platforms, we'll show you some photos. If you're listening on the podcast, we're going to read for you a letter that this impassioned, and I'm going to say devastated real talker has written in about Infill. We're going to share all of that with you today. But first, in case you missed it, on the 22nd of August, here's how that interaction went down.
Infill shouldn't be part of an election campaign.
Infill is the number one issue in the city right now.
Whoa.
What?
I'm in a suburban riding. I don't care about this.
People in your riding care too.
No, nobody cares. It's
Yes,
a market-based solutions. Let the market dictate what happens. All these people at Crestwood.
I take offense to that. It is not just Crestwood and it's not just Glenora. You talk to, and I have door knocked with candidates all over the city, Harman. Almost every riding, it's people crying at the doors, begging for someone to listen to them, that they have a family home and they have their community and they have their life and they have their investment and their dollars in their house. And here comes this massive structure next to them and a massive structure next to them. When you move and you invest into wherever, I'm sorry, there are lots of people that are mad and the policy needs to be changed. So whatever.
And it's like,
but for you to say that it's only Glenora makes me mad, and that's cheap.
Big city problems. Yes, we have to manage them. But to say that we will put a moratorium, to say that we're going to stop these things,
a pause on it, to figure it out and get it right, I'm sorry.
You just said you want stability and investment.
What is wrong with that?
Did you not just see
this blanket development thing? It's not working.
It's working for some people.
For the developers.
It's working for people who are now having more affordable places to live.
Have you
who have the luxury to now live in your community?
Samuel Red lives in the sixplex in the Ritchie neighborhood, an area he says would be too expensive otherwise.
Thanks to the sixplex, I could have a home here.
Council needs to be laser focused on how do we build more homes in the places that people want to live, not on reducing the amount of homes that we can build in the places that people want to live.
Why not slow it down and get it right? I'm not disagreeing with you on that. The thing that we're disagreeing on is that this is an an issue or not.
So what's happening?
So Edmontonians should have a say,
That
whether they
developers
live
understand that
in Windermere or Mill Woods or anywhere. They should have a say. They pay the bills.
What's the market failure, Jenny, that you're trying to correct?
I'm not trying to correct a market failure.
So then if there's no market failure, if there's no issue other than people are concerned of what? That there's a degradation of the value of their home because they're next to an infill?
I think that you are being like, lucky for you, it's not happening to you. Because for a lot of these families, and again, I'm talking about all over the city, majority of people, all of their net worth is in their home.
There's a lot of communities in Mill Woods where there is infill happening. There's aggressive infill happening. And a lot of people are very excited to see the redevelopment, even mid-block, in a lot of those communities that are established.
But what I think you're both saying is, I think when you go door to door right now, there's this feeling that there's a lack of vision of what's actually happening. So there's a lack of trust.
And a lack of
in
listening.
what's actually, yes, lack of listening, a lack of trust on the people making the decisions and how things are getting done. So there's just not this grace being given for what is happening.
I think that we need some sort of way to ensure good infill, and it looks good and is in keeping with the character of a neighborhood.
Okay.
The drama. Yeah, we'll talk about it after. But yeah.
Well, we can talk about it now.
No, I want to get to our expert because I do tend to lean
happened.
towards some of Harmon's arguments, but I want to hear from an expert.
So here's what makes this particularly interesting is we told you during the show that we were on our way to Jasper, right, for Tee Up for Tots. And Harmon's there in huge support of the Stollery Children's Hospital.
Sure. Yeah.
And Jenny's there.
Raised over $1 million. Congratulations.
Thank
by
you.
the way.
$1.217 million for the Stollery.
Amazing.
Unbelievable stuff. We'll talk more about Tee Up for Tots on Wednesday's show. And so the two of them are there. And obviously they've been friends for a long time. And we're all friends.
Yeah.
And I walked up to them and I said, hey, and because I'm just being like a little bit mischievous, but also because my
you like to poke the fire.
I said, let's take a photo of the three of us. And I said, and I'm going to post it, and I'm just going to say, still friends, right?
Yeah.
And they were both laughing, and Jenny goes, she goes, nah, he called me, and Harmon goes, yeah, I called her after the show, and we like sorted it out and this, that, and the other.
I assumed. Yeah.
But then it like kind of ramps up a little bit more because there's like this tournament, like I said, raised $1.2 million. So like it draws a certain supporter.
Sure.
And so like guess who's in the room? Like a bunch of developers.
Yeah.
And so I get the odd person coming up to me being like, frankly, what the fuck went down on your show? And number one, like just as a talk show host, my heart is just full. Like I'm like, everybody's listening to it. Everybody's heard it. But it gives you the sense that the past few days have been a bit of a rocky ride for Harmon because of, the team that he's running on, the team that there's slates, right? There's like municipal political parties for the first time ever in the province of Alberta leading up to this October 20th election. Harmon is running on the team that has basically called for a moratorium on infill.
Sure.
So for him to say it's not an election issue, now obviously everybody's going, well, what's the truth? What's the deal?
But it was going to come out, and I like that Harmon wears his heart on his sleeve. Like 100%. Now we know his position right off the bat.
And actually, if I may humbly submit, I actually think that it's not the worst thing in the world to have some, and like the loaded word would be dissension in the ranks. But I think like, look what we asked for in our political parties, right? We asked for differences of opinion around the cabinet table, or we asked for differences of, we expect, for example, our elected representatives. I chastise politicians all the time for not reflecting the views and perspectives of their constituents, for the people that voted them in, right?
Sure.
So if you're voting for someone in like a rural riding versus like a suburban riding versus a downtown riding, even if they're running under the same slate, you might say, or on the same political party, you would hope that there might be mild or even some cases significant differences of opinion, and those could be hashed out in caucus meetings, right? So different perspectives brought to the table.
And I love that this happened on our show. And I also, number two, love that it happened organically because it shows the tone in the city right now. Whether you are for or against it, I mean, we all know this city is growing. We all know we can't build out forever. We've got to build up. I do agree that we should do it properly. But I also tend to agree with a lot of points that Harmon made, which was... Let's listen to the expert first. But I love that this happened on our show because this shows the tone of how people are divided right now.
100%, Johnny. So, we've got Tony, for example, in our live chat powered by Park Power. She says, I have political debates with my circle of friends all the time. She says, it's basically conservatives versus me, the lone progressive. She says, and we're all still friends. Right? Like Matthew says, live chat's firing right now. Matt, you guys have all been waiting too, right? Matthew says it's really important we don't prevent density just because we have lots of land. The more we sprawl, the more we pay. Matthew's not wrong. Rec centers, fire halls, roads,
Agreed.
police, libraries, not to mention water, sewer, power, right? So we'll get into and I can see the live chat. I want to let you know we're going to be screenshotting a lot of these because this thing, it goes and it disappears into the ether. I'll grab a bunch of these, but I will say this: I happened to know at the time because I'd gotten the heads up from our friends at Athabasca University that they had and I'm talking like a couple of months ago, onboarded an expert in this field.
I'm ready for this.
We reach out to them right away. So in partnership with our friends at Athabasca University in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West, it's a real pleasure to welcome to the program, making his debut, an assistant professor of political science at AU. His research focuses on public opinion toward housing and Canadian politics. Dr. Alex Rivard, thanks for making time for us today. Welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Can't wait to be here. I've been in Edmonton for like 2 weeks now, so I'm still getting all caught up with the neighborhoods and all this debate. So this is a fun time.
Yeah. So you're moving out here from Quebec, is that correct?
I've moved here from I was in Vancouver first.
Okay, perfect. By way of Quebec?
Yes.
Okay, so you've seen like city building, you've seen housing debates. I'm sure that you've seen infill in theory and in practice in a number of different major markets. And when I reached out to you, I sent you the full episode link. I sent you that short we all just watched. And the first thing you said back to me was, gosh, I would love to be on that show to be able to participate in that conversation. Where would you have liked to jump in, Alex?
I would have liked to have towed that nice kind of centrist line in between them because I think kind of like both of them were wrong in different regards. So like when we talk about like Harmon, like that clip was awesome, right? That clip where he's going off about how this isn't an election issue or it shouldn't be an issue. No, I don't think that's right at all. I think like poll after poll has showed pretty consistently that housing is if not the number one issue, it's a top 5 issue. And if we combine it with other indicators like cost of living, which like could ostensibly be kind of measuring the same thing, right? Housing is certainly a part of that. That's like on the top of a lot of Canadians' kind of wish lists and policy issues right now. And then I think when we kind of get to what Jenny was saying about like, you know, lack of listening, lack of trust. You know, I've been door knocking and I've been hearing a lot of people that are opposed to it. Like I get it, but also like fundamentally every poll that I've run for the past couple of years now has shown that like in the big picture thing, Canadians actually don't oppose it. There's actually support density and regulatory changes to zoning laws in pretty big numbers.
Okay, but people might support it, and then all of a sudden they might realize that there's an 8-plex going on one side of them and an 8-plex going in on the other side, and then they might change their minds because all of a sudden it's just become very, very real, right? Like we're showing for context here, Doc. This is a photo that's been submitted by a real talker. He's asked me don't use his name. I'm going to call him Terry through the episode today. This is a real property. This is a real house in Edmonton. For those of you that are watching on the podcast, this is a nice family home, single family home. I'm going to guess off the top of my head, it's about 1,800 to 2,000 square feet approximately. I don't know. And then 2 massive developments going in on either side. You can see that it's cutting off the sunlight in the backyard. That's probably the least of this resident's worries, but this is what it's looking like in practice, and I think that the average person can understand. I mean, this looks like that movie Up, where there's like the old timer with his house and skyscrapers all around him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I fully agree, and like I have a lot of sympathy for we're calling him Terry. I have a lot of sympathy for Terry because obviously that's not what Terry wants. But at the same time, I think to call that like the commonplace form of development that we're going to be seeing around Edmonton, like again, I'm kind of new here, but like, is that the case? Like, are most houses going to be overcrowded by 8-plexes? Like, I'm not entirely sure about that. Like, a lot of this kind of like infill development that I'm seeing is kind of turning one single family lot into 2 single family houses, right? That's where we ended up in Strathern. Like, cards on the table. I might be coming this from a little bias, but like I'm coming to you from the basement. This is the first time I've ever owned a house in my life.
Congratulations.
It's in the Strathern area and it's infill development, right? We're really pleased with this house. We couldn't afford a house in this neighborhood if it wasn't infill.
Yeah, no kidding. This is, by the way, did I even welcome you to Edmonton? I'm not sure that I even welcomed you to Alberta. That's what I'm supposed to do. We've put out this Alberta calling campaign, and us 5 million Albertans, we're supposed to extend our arms and warmly welcome people here. So welcome. And how cool is it? I'm not going to get awkward and ask you what you paid for your infill in Strathern, but I would say based on an educated guess, you paid somewhere between $600,000 and $1 million for a nice new infill in Strathern. For people's reference, that's the neighborhood that proudly hosts the Edmonton Folk Music Festival. You look north over the River Valley onto Edmonton's downtown. It's a beautiful neighborhood, a nice, mature neighborhood. I've not met a lot of people that take issue with like they call them like the skinny homes, like taking one lot and splitting it into two. Some folks really hate it, and you see restrictive covenants in some areas where they want absolutely zero density. But I would say for the most part, anecdotally, I'm making up the number, but I would say like 85% of people are totally cool with like skinny homes and splitting a lot from 1 to 2. Where I think that a lot of people, where this is getting really contentious, is with these new bylaws in Calgary and Edmonton in particular that some have described as like the Wild West of real estate development in Canada right now. We're seeing mid-block builds of 6plexes, of 8plexes right next to people, and in some circumstances, like look at this, Doc, this aerial view that Terry has sent us, like that is absolutely bonkers in my mind, and that sort of a thing influences my perspective. That may not be there's no backyard there's no parking there's no nothing. They've taken every single foot they can build on, and they've built straight up on both sides of Terry's house. Like that, to me, that looks like density done wrong. Do you agree or disagree?
I mean, I disagree. Like, obviously, I think we think that we look at a photo like that and we say that's density gone wrong, because that's a pretty unique photo that I would say, right? Like, it obviously doesn't look good from that perspective. But like, again, like I don't know enough about the neighborhood. Like, I have no cues as to like where this house is. Is it close to transit lines? Is it close to things to do? Is it close to like major hubs and stuff like that? But like, again, like I don't think that that's density done wrong. Assuming, now here's a caveat, assuming it's where the density should be. I think even those of us who are fans and will argue in favor of increased density, I'm not dumb enough to say that we should be putting skyscrapers like in the suburbs, right? Like we need to put density where density makes sense. And I understand from that perspective, particularly when it's looking at this gentleman's house, I can see why that's frustrated, and I could see why this would activate some NIMBY, some like not in my backyard sentiments, because obviously it sucks to be that guy. I think like I could see why he wouldn't be happy with that, but like I'm not sure that this is density gone wrong, because like if we're serious about addressing the housing crisis in this country, we need to allow for more density.
Okay, so you've obviously seen the research on this. You conducted research on this. You've studied this, and I know that you've used the word. You say like NIMBYism is a considerable issue hampering our ability to solve the housing crisis. We had a guy by the name of Travis Watt on the show. What was it, Johnny? I think like a few months ago, something like that, a couple months ago. Mm-hmm. Similar situation. What made Travis's story particularly interesting is that he and his family bought like a wartime bungalow, and then tore it down and built their dream home there, kind of their forever home there. So they bought, demolished, and built, right? Okay, so they did that on that street. I bet you some people on the street didn't even like that. But then next to them, somebody bought, demolished, and put in a massive, like a multifamily unit. And then Travis, basically dismayed, reached out to the show and said, like, this is going to hurt our property value. This isn't the experience we were hoping for. This is totally transformed, not in a good way in his estimation, the feel or the look or the character of the neighborhood. I thought that was kind of interesting because the Watt family did their own build, and then they had something happen beside them that they didn't like. Travis came on the show. Now, Travis shared with us that he had spoken with a number of different politicians. You'll get to know all these names, obviously, having just moved here. Andrew Knack is a longtime city councilor, perceived to be more of a progressive, fairly perceived, and he's big on density. Like, he's doubling down on density right now. This is a council that's taken a lot of punches for where it's gone or hasn't gone on density. He's doubling down on it. To Knack's credit, to the counselor, hoping to be mayor, he spoke with Travis, and Travis said it was a great meeting, said that Knack walked the neighborhood with him. So then Knack comes on this show on Real Talk, and he says, Travis isn't a NIMBY. He kind of jumped to his defense. He said, I understand Travis's concerns. I understand that this isn't exactly what his family envisioned. Perhaps most importantly, I understand that he's worried about his biggest investment, right? His family's nest egg, like this property that they hope to see an increase in property value for over the years. So he's not a NIMBY. Are we too loosely as Canadians kind of tossing these phrases around? Like who deserves to be NIMBY and who doesn't in your mind?
Yeah, okay. So I think that's a really good point, and there's a distinction that has to be made between what we call a NIMBY and what we might call a neighborhood defender. Okay, so a NIMBY, so in theory, right, a NIMBY actually doesn't oppose development; they just don't want it near them. They're fine with it somewhere else. A neighborhood defender is somebody that doesn't necessarily oppose density, but is more concerned with saving the character of their neighborhood. So, like, you go to build a sixplex, you come out and you're like, well, I don't want this sixplex because it has a negative effect on my neighborhood. So what I want is I want to defend my neighborhood from this change. So I want the developer to make the sixplex a fourplex. I want it to make a fourplex, a townhouse, something like that. Okay, so like we should distinguish between NIMBYs and defenders, because defenders don't see themselves as objecting to new development. They see themselves as kind of defending their neighborhoods. That being said, though, given what you just said about the example that was provided about knocking down a wartime house, building up your own house, and then getting mad when somebody else beside you is building like a duplex or giving you more neighbors, like it is kind of ironic. And also the corollary to that too is that like it's often opponents that are most willing to speak out. It's opponents, and we know this is an empirical fact, particularly in the United States. We don't have the data yet in Canada just for annoying government reasons, but like in the States, it's those who are opposed to changes that are the most likely to speak out, and they do speak out, and those are the voices that get listened to the most. Okay. So these concerns like you raise about like neighborhood character, like my polling shows that for the vast majority of Canadians, it's just not the case. Like our most recent poll, we asked that, do you think it threatens the neighborhood, your neighborhood character? And it's like 35% to 39% of Canadians actually believe that increased density is going to threaten their neighborhood character.
Interesting. I like that neighborhood defender. Although I suppose sometimes the context or the application of a neighborhood defender can go in the completely wrong direction as well, right? Like, absolutely. I can think of an example in our neighborhood where there's this big, beautiful. It was actually originally it was a house of worship. It was actually a synagogue, and it had been converted to a residence. And then an investor bought it, wanted to turn it into a daycare, and it was quite a divisive issue. You know where all this unfolds, of course. It's the neighborhood Facebook pages, and that's where I would watch this debate play out in real time. And I stayed the hell out of it, Doc. I didn't want anything to do with it, at least not publicly. But there were folks that were thrilled that a child care center, the reputable daycare in a beautiful building, by the way, would be a couple of blocks from their home. They talked about how convenient and wonderful it would be, how it might draw young families to the area. And then there were folks that were choked about the number of cars that would be arriving between 7 and 8 a.m. and 3 and 5 p.m. And they actually opposed this like vociferously, and it became a very, very divisive issue in our neighborhood. So it does happen. But I want to put Terry on the record here. So this is the Real Talker that submitted these photos, his family's home in between these two big ones, these two eightplexes, I believe they are. He wrote this in right after our August 22nd episode. He says, our home has unfortunately become one of the faces of this issue in Alberta's capital city, as one particularly striking example of intense infill that's occurring across the city, especially in central neighborhoods. A reference for our Edmonton audience, like Windsor Park, Crestwood, Glenora, McKernan, Belgravia, and many others. Terry says the challenge is when we speak about our concerns, as evidenced by some unfortunate comments made by a city council candidate last week on your show, our experiences are dismissed by some who label us as NIMBY, elitist, or worse. These types of judgments are so disappointing because they paint the situation as black and white, housing or no housing. In reality, Terry says what folks are asking for is balance and nuance in how we best accommodate Edmonton's growing need, I might say Alberta's growing need for attainable housing. Says, yes, councillors represent specific wards where this may or may not be a major concern, but all councillors should strive to have a holistic understanding of and a respect for what Edmontonians are experiencing across the city. Terry says when it comes to the infill issue, the zoning bylaw was intentionally designed as a blanket approach. And this means that the context of each neighborhood, every street, what makes our homes and communities unique is lost. And he says, and this is what residents are most concerned about. He says, I always tell people the pictures I've shared with your show speak for themselves. There's no question these developments have fundamentally changed our experience of our home. and it's disheartening when our experiences are discounted or invalidated. He says people are speaking up because the city got it wrong and they need to fix it. The reality is, says Terry, nothing's going to change for me and my family now, but we're thinking about our neighbors, our friends, our fellow Edmontonians, and how to make sure that they have a voice in the growth and development of the communities that they love. That's what we got from Terry.
I think so. I agree with like half of that. I definitely don't think in this situation that Terry is a NIMBY. Okay, like I fully understand why he objects to this development. I get it. That makes a lot of sense looking at the photos. I can see why he objects to it. On the other side, again, like I said, it is mostly opponents that are willing to speak out. And we're using Terry's story here to draw a story of what I think might not necessarily be the actual kind of infill development that we're seeing in Edmonton. To that point as well, if we're talking about zoning changes, I think we also need to understand that a lot of these zoning changes served as a way to protect single-family homeowners, as a way to protect the single-family home. And when we kind of look into, again, support for zoning, like my last survey, we asked Canadians the extent to which you support repealing single-family zoning to allow for more construction. 60% of Canadians support it, 56% of Albertans support it, and 56% of Albertan homeowners support it. We also asked, do you want to relax local laws and regulations to allow for more housing construction? 72% of Canadians support it, 72% of Albertans support it, and 2/3 of Albertan homeowners support it as well.
Can you, Alex, give us a sense of like with your polling, like, you know, who you're talking to or how you conduct that, like where these people are reporting from? Are they from major urban centers? Like, give us some insight into who's responding.
Yeah, so these polls here are national surveys. So this one was about 2,000 people across Canada,
okay,
which gives us about 300 to 400 people in Alberta. So it's not an Alberta-specific poll, which I will be getting to probably in the next couple months there once I get settled in a little bit here. But generally speaking, the Alberta numbers are not dissimilar from the national Canadian numbers. In Alberta, they are likely being pulled from larger cities like Edmonton and Calgary.
Okay, yeah, but I'm curious to know, and actually I think it's great that they're not just Alberta numbers, and it's great that you've lived in different parts of Canada and have seen this, because, you know, I'm curious to know, like, and I know we'll get pushback right away from our Alberta audience saying, like, well, we're not Vancouver, we're not Montreal, we're not Toronto, we're proudly not those cities. But what has worked or what hasn't worked in Toronto? I mean, how did Vancouver grapple with this 15 years ago? What have other cities done that has worked?
Yeah, so the thing with Vancouver, and I think some of the zoning changes that the British Columbia government has put forward, I think might be a little surprising to some of your listeners. The NDP government of David Eby has been probably the most, I don't want to say progressive because I don't want to imply that it's left of center, but it's been certainly the most active in terms of how it's approached zoning regulations. So we've seen like by right constructions allowing for duplexes, like mid-street duplexes, increased density by transit lines. We've seen the province unilaterally flex its muscles over regulation from the municipalities. And we've also seen a serious decrease in the number of public consultations needed in order to approve a project. And that has been pretty considerable because it's like sped up the time frame to get these projects approved, and it's limited the ability for opponents to organize and kind of flood these meetings with their oppositions. In contrast, in Ontario, right, we've reached a point in Ontario where the cost of building new houses is actually more expensive than the price that the house would be sold for. So the sale of new houses is going to be pretty stagnant in Toronto. This is cost of materials, but also there's something called the development cost, right? I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I'm sure it's six figures at least that a developer has to pay for each house that they build. So if it's like $150,000, once that house is built, you have to give $150,000 straight to the city. So all of this stuff kind of hampers development. Montreal, in contrast, has been, for the most part, kind of insulated from these because Montreal has generally been a more dense city, and a lot of these neighborhoods, like NDG, were kind of developed around the idea of duplexes on every street as single-family homes.
Right. Did you, I don't know, you and I are just meeting for the first time on camera, so I don't know if you're a family man, anything like that. You're certainly obviously a professional. You mentioned to us, you shared with us that this is the first time that you've ever owned a house, the first time you ever bought a house. Obviously, you're coming from two of the most heated housing markets in the country right now. My brother and sister both live in BC. My brother has like all but forgotten any dream that he ever had about home ownership in downtown Vancouver. I mean, forget about it. Did the cost of housing or did opportunities in housing ownership contribute to your decision to move to Alberta? I'm asking you a personal question.
So much so.
Really?
The neighborhood we lived in Vancouver was called Dunbar neighborhood. The cheapest house for sale in our neighborhood was about $2.8 million.
Cheapest?
The cheapest. Yeah. There's these kind of condos that were built. 2-bedroom condo was 2.1. Somebody just rented theirs out for $5,800 a month.
Right.
My wife and my kid, he's about 2.5 years old. We were living in a 550 square foot basement and we were trying to get out. And we were like, look, we'd love to stay in Vancouver, but it's just never going to happen. So when this job came, and we got the opportunity to move to Edmonton, we were like, hell yeah, let's get out of here. Let's go to Edmonton. We can buy a house. We could have some room for the dog and the kid. It was a serious factor in our decision.
Okay, and this is relevant, right? Like that's relevant. I want to know the perspective from where you're coming from on a number, personally and professionally. You said there. You talked about David Eby and you said progressive, and then you kind of checked yourself. And you said, well, I don't know if Spinham is kind of left of center. We got an interesting comment from Jillian here in our live chat, powered by Park Power. She says the entire housing thing is too complex to be a political issue, in my view. She says everybody wants different things depending on where they live or if they even own a property. Is she right?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So what people want is definitely different from is definitely based on where they live. But like a lot of research again has shown that what people want, like they actually want density. They want maybe gentle density, but they want to live near things. They want to live in a walkable city. And that's kind of like even people that live in the suburbs, it's been showed that like after commuting to work for a while, they get really frustrated with that, right? They like, I would just like to be able to walk to the grocery store every now and then. So it is dependent on where people live, and she's absolutely right. Like the kind of density I think that I would propose for the suburban area outside the Henday, hope I got that right, is probably different than the type of density that I would support for like Strathern or Strathcona. That being said, it is a political issue because my work shows like again, like a lot of the stuff that influences whether people support or oppose housing is your ideology. Whether you're conservative, support the free market, how much you don't like immigrants, how much you're an egalitarian, that is super important in structuring how you view the construction of new housing.
Okay, yeah, fair point. And I guess like to a certain degree, we must acknowledge that whether we like it or not, it is a political issue. Anytime that it involves bylaws, anytime that right? I mean, like it is political. Like it or not. I just don't, I think I don't know if you'd agree with me or disagree. By the way, can I say early in our on-camera relationship here, I appreciate that you're not afraid to disagree with anything, which is great. Worst nightmare is a guest that agrees with the host all the time or agrees with all the other guests. But like I've heard from conservatives, like I happen to know they're conservatives, that are choked about where their neighborhood is going and how their neighborhood is changing. And I've also heard from conservatives that are developers that are thrilled with the opportunity and that are doing everything that they can to capitalize on it. I've heard from progressives that believe very strongly that density and infill should happen wherever possible. And I've also heard from progressives that are unhappy with how their neighborhood is changing. So I would say, like, anecdotally, I do think it's possible to have a view on infill that is absolutely that's unrelated, that's insulated from your politics. And I think that that's a good thing as well. I'm kind of sick of how team sports have been forming and shaping and dictating people's opinions on virtually everything these days.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And actually, I think like the biggest kind of the most obvious sign to me that is happening is that if you looked at the last federal election, Jagmeet Singh and the NDP were going on and on and on about the construction of more social housing, which is good. The problem being is that like this might be controversial, but it's not. Most Canadians don't need social housing. So when Jagmeet Singh, the left of center progressive social democratic party, is going on about putting the emphasis on building more social housing, like what does our data show? Our data shows that egalitarians, those leftists, those who are more likely to support the NDP, support both market housing and they support the construction of social housing. So for us, we were looking at the NDP campaign and we were like, what the hell are you doing? You're focusing on one type of housing, but there's a split even within your own ranks about what's best. And I think we need to get back to the comment, like we need to understand that there is no one size that fits all solution to this. And speaking to people across ideologies is super hard. And there's no way we're going to be able to tailor a message or a policy that appeases everybody.
Yeah, listen, I appreciate your take on this, and I just know the way that our live chat is going, that this conversation is far from over. You know, like Plain Power is watching right now live, says sprawl is bankrupting our cities. We need new ideas as the old ones are financially destructive. Meantime, Pat says infills are great until the 8-plex is right next door. Pat says, I know from experience. So there you go. And I love this from Ben Demon Hunter, and I agree with Ben. Says some of the best and most enjoyable conversations, debates, and even sometimes arguments have been with friends that believe things completely differently than myself. That from Ben. We're talking to Dr. Alex Rivard, Athabasca University. Hang tight. I want to ask you about the new Elbows Down campaign from Mark Carney. That in just a second. Dr. Rivard, professor and assistant professor of political science at Athabasca University. We're grateful for their partnership. You know, one of the things about Athabasca University that I know a lot of people love is that as we're talking right now about going back to school, some of your kids may already be back. Some of your kids will be going back after Labor Day. Some of you post-secondary students are gearing up to go back. The beautiful part about Athabasca University is that as an open university, it's designed so you can complete your education wherever and whenever it works for you. Like, let's say what Dr. Rivard's talking about is all kind of spurring your interest in political science. And all of a sudden you're thinking, gosh, I'm going to start looking into the programs there. But I can't start at the very beginning of September. Or I got this big thing coming in November. I'm not going to be able to attend classes. I can't miss 3 weeks. With Athabasca University, you are setting the pace of your studies. You're never going to fall behind. You can fast forward ahead if you like, but that's exactly why they boast more than 50,000 program and course alumni from over 100 countries, because it works for you no matter what. You can go to their website, athabascau.ca, to learn more about the AU Advantage and take those first few steps toward getting started. Hundreds of programs and courses. You're guaranteed to find a fit, including that AU MBA, by the way. A friend of mine just completed it. Congratulations to her. Athabasca University, online always, and available today. More information at athabascau.ca. I like what Ben was talking about, you know, talking to friends of yours that see things differently, debates, arguments. I had that experience just this weekend, believe it or not. I'm showing you our Real Talk YouTube channel right now. You know, if you scroll down past our live episode that you're seeing, you go past the full episodes, that's where you can see the shorts we've put together and the highlights. The very first highlight that you'll find there is Marshall McAllister from North Road Investment Council, a CFA, getting into his take on whether or not Albertans would actually get rich by separating from Canada. He brought the facts to the table and touched on our interview from August 20th with Jeff Rath, the Alberta separatist, the lawyer from the Alberta Prosperity Project. If you'd like some steady commentary, some credible commentary on a CPP versus Alberta pension plan, on what international investment might do with talk of separation, I recommend you check out that highlight featuring Marshall McAllister from North Road Investment Council. If you're interested in learning more about what Marshall and Carrie and their team do, a steady hand and a studied voice to guide you through wealth and investing, you can find them online today at northroadic.com. Our friends at California Closets, whether it's an infill, whether it's a heritage home, whether it's an apartment building, whether it's an office, whether it's your garage, they can create and install a custom closet and storage solution that's guaranteed to work for you. In fact, they can work with any space. They can work with any budget. And you can find the proof on their website, californiaclosets.ca, or go visit one of their beautiful locations. Go see a California Closets designer in one of their beautiful showrooms. I guarantee that they'll be able to either work with the vision that you already have or come up with something that'll knock your socks off. You can learn more about the different budget levels, from the practical simplicity all the way up to luxury refined. Don't forget, everything California Closets installs is manufactured right here in Alberta. This is a Canadian-owned company, and their work is guaranteed for life. You can request that free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. And John, on my way out to Jasper this weekend, passing through the beautiful town of Hinton, the gateway to the Rocky Mountains, had to pop into a Friesen Brothers.
Is that on the sign?
It is. You know what? They should be on the sign. We can give them that one for free. You know, Friesen Brothers started in Hinton, a small butcher shop 70 years ago, now growing to 16 locations across the country. We picked up one of those fruit platters We picked up the nice veggie platter with the
talking
dip.
my language.
That stuff is nice and easy to carry in the car. The kids love it. Of course, I had to pick up some sourdough cinnamon buns, and we brought some gifts for friends of ours in Jasper. Friesen Brothers, perfect. Perfect whether you need to sit in store and enjoy something like a braised beef short rib, or you need to grab something as you're on your way through town. I highly recommend Friesen Brothers. Don't forget, the 1st of September will be your next chance to save 15% on grocery purchases of $75 or more. That's the first of every month, only at Friesen Brothers.
Our unofficial, unscientific poll of our
here we go.
viewers currently on YouTube shows the divide we're all talking about.
Really?
Do you think infill development currently threatens neighborhoods in a negative way in Edmonton? I realize it's subject very nuanced. So
Sure.
The word currently refers to, like you said, kind of the Wild West style that's going on right now. And you see a split that's going back and forth as people continue to vote, but 44% saying yes, it's negative, 56% saying no.
Okay, interesting. I see Stephen Rates. His name has jumped off the page in our live chat. Stephen, thanks for watching our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Stephen is a passionate city builder and a contributor. He's done a lot of work on cycling infrastructure in the cities. And in all caps, Alex, in all caps, Stephen says, thank God this guy is taking a balanced approach and is well-researched. So you've already made a strong impact on the Real Talk audience in your debut appearance. We're talking to Dr. Alex Rivard from Athabasca University. Let me ask you about this. This is a story that broke over the last few days, and it's been interesting to watch the fallout from, in particular, prominent conservatives across the country. But I want to reference Robin Urbach and her reporting on Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, retreating. And this is the word everybody's using. I'll read her headline. Carney's reciprocal tariff retreat might seem like a betrayal, but it makes sense. And I want to read a quick portion before I throw it over to you. Robin writes, elbows up was always a campaign-winning but policy-losing strategy. She says, we've all unfortunately become students of the mercurial menace that is Donald Trump. We know that the American president is a less serious negotiating partner than an obstinate toddler, and you don't go elbows up against toddlers for the simple reason that they are, in a word, insane. She says, so you don't fight back against toddlers, you handle them, you act like the adult, you wait them out, and you try to distract them out of a tantrum. But selling that approach at a time when the Canadian public was justifiably seething, she's talking about the election campaign, over President Trump's threats was hardly the way to win an election campaign. People didn't want to hear about carrots and sticks. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, one of the few Canadian leaders at the time expressing skepticism around retaliatory tariffs, was called a traitor for suggesting there might be better ways to deal with the Americans. But poll after poll showed that Canadians wanted retaliatory tariffs, so party leaders pledged they would respond with exactly that. Mark Carney had the opportunity to deliver. She goes on to write about how he has relaxed his elbows, flattered the president. She says many Canadians will see this latest move, pausing counter tariffs on the U.S., as a betrayal of what Carney promised during the election, and that's fair. She says he didn't campaign on managing Trump, he campaigned on fighting him. But Robin Urbach writes, the approach he has since adopted, Carney, is the smarter one, both from a policy perspective and from a negotiating one. So it's prompted some interesting comments online from prominent conservatives. I noticed, the former interim leader of the Conservatives, longtime health minister, longtime senior cabinet minister for Prime Minister Stephen Harper, Ronna Ambrose, tweeting about this over the weekend, saying it is true, she says, that Doug Ford, Mark Carney, and mainstream media all owe Danielle Smith an apology. Where do you land on this?
That's a good point. Honestly, I think I'm gonna waffle a bit here. Like, I'm not too sure. On the one hand, yeah, this was obviously a campaign strategy. Elbows up was always going to be a campaign strategy. We cannot win a commercial trade war with the United States. We are also incredibly dependent on the American economy. That being said, I think you also need to take into account that maybe the optics of going down to Mar-a-Lago, schmoozing with Trump in Florida in the middle of this might not have been great. Like, I think we can understand what she was trying to do. A negotiating strategy to walk back tariffs, probably good. We don't want tariffs. But again, is the optics of going down there and cozying up with somebody who particularly at the time was pretty hell-bent on are taking over our sovereignty and threatening to annex us, and getting a lot of Canadians worried about the possibility of war, whether that was legitimate or not. Like, I don't know. I think from that perspective, I mean, I could see why people would rightly be pissed off with that.
Yeah. And I don't mind your waffle, because I actually think I never mind waffles. But I do think, like, one of the things that and by the way, Robin is not perceived to be like a lefty commentator, and she's not perceived to be a right winger either. But I think like she's a steady commentator. I read pretty much everything she writes. And I do think that you do have to talk about two different circumstances, and maybe three, involving renegotiating for Kuzma, which 2026, I'm sure it's happening already. Obvious. I mean, this has just been a sort of an ebb and flow between Canada and the U.S. and obviously other partners as well. Canada just announcing a new deal with Germany that I've seen some skepticism around, but still, these are happening. We're looking to broaden our export markets. There's conversations happening here at home about expanding pipelines. All of this is literally related to what's happening in the United States. But it is a constantly changing landscape, right? Like, I mean, it's a different situation if like, the tariffs on steel and aluminum are 25 to 35%, or 25% to 10, or 25 to 0. These are major differences in markets. I will acknowledge, and I think that this will probably make me sound somewhat cynical, but I do think it's true, that oftentimes parties need to do what they need to do to get elected, not to suggest that as the electorate, we should tolerate being lied to or seeing campaigns that present a certain reality and then don't deliver on that reality, that say that they will do something in government and then don't do that in government. But I think that the elbows up campaign, so to speak, resonated with where the Canadian public was at big time. I mean, the American anthem was getting booed during the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, Canadians were pissed off big time. But then at the same time, I think it's also ludicrous to suggest that anybody, Mark Carney or Bret Hart, the Hitman, or anybody from Canada would walk into the Oval Office with their elbows up and try to bully the biggest bully on planet Earth. Like, I don't think that's realistic. So that's kind of where I land on it. But if I'm Danielle Smith, which I'm not, if I'm Danielle Smith, this is a time where I understand she's going to step forward and say, this is kind of what I said the whole time. That doesn't mean it would have won Carney the election. That doesn't mean it was smart strategy at the time.
Yeah, and I think to touch on that too, like you mentioned, like diversifying our trade interests. Like you said, Germany, I think there's one with Poland. I think we're working with something with South Korea or somebody to that effect. That's all well and good, but it's not enough to replace the trade that we have going to the United States, right? We are incredibly dependent on our economy to the United States. And I know there's certain people that says like that's bad, but like in terms of economic prosperity, like it's generally a good thing. It becomes a bad thing when, we have an unstable actor in the White House who starts levying tariffs left, right, and center because he's stuck in an economic way of thinking of the late 1800s. Now, in terms of Carney and the economy and the campaign, I think 2 points there. One, Carney is an economist by trade. You can't convince me that Carney actually believes that tariffs are good. So the fact that Carney starts to walk back these reciprocal tariffs is like unsurprising to me because he's an economist by trade. He realizes that they're bad, and they're bad for Canadian consumers. They're bad for Canadian producers and businesses as well. So when it comes to elbows up, like I also don't see this as the end of elbows up. I think when we were talking about peak elbows up, like, I was in the States when we had that gold medal hockey game, and that was like so much fun to be in the States as a Canadian. And again, like somebody was like really helped me kind of rediscover Canadian nationalism in that era. And we're talking about elbows up, but the effect that elbows up was being driven by tariffs, I'm not convinced. I think we also have to recognize that there was a serious 51st state, Governor Trudeau, we're coming to annex you. You're going to be a big, beautiful province. Like that, I think resonates more with people's defense mechanisms than some like weird opaque notion of a tariff. So like, is it elbows down? No, I still think Canadians are still going to have their elbows up. I still think we're going to buy domestic, but like the kind of talk on we're going to annex you has kind of died down. So I think from that perspective, like maybe it's like one elbow up.
Yeah.
You're going into the corner to get the puck in the corner. You're going to put one elbow up.
Well, the talk about annexing us and Canada's the 51st state has chilled out, but meantime, it feels like, I think it's safe to say financial and other resources are being allegedly deployed from American sources to the Alberta independence movement in whatever way, shape, or form. This is me avoiding getting sued. And I think it's quite obvious, because we've heard it on this show as recently as last week, that there is a movement within Alberta to try to create a sentiment or try to fan the flames of a sentiment that would see Alberta join the United States and provide access to many of these critical natural resources and human talent and many other things. So I agree with you that there's been no recent talk from Donald Trump, which is like within the last month, I guess, about the imaginary line, the border, and the 51st state. But I don't think that idea around Alberta as a 51st state or Alberta joining the United States has gone anywhere. By the way, to get personal again with you, did that create any hesitation on you or your family's part? You got some experience in Quebec, by the way. Alberta and Quebec, what an interesting relationship. So many differences, but so many similarities, or some similarities anyway. And then you're coming from Vancouver. Did the separation talk have any bearing on or create any hesitation for you and your family?
No. So like what you said, like I'm a Quebecer. I've been through this. To be fair, I was very, very young during the second referendum, but like this is just part of my political upbringing. I also study separatism. So like actually being in Alberta was an unbelievably amazing opportunity for me to be on the ground in the middle of an independence campaign.
Wow.
To do some polling when that happens next year. So it was almost too good to be true. So if anything, it encouraged me.
Okay, well, listen, I'm going to have to ask you to come back on the show. We'll talk about separation some other time, as we get closer to a referendum, whether or not that happens. We'd love to include you on a panel. Just to pull back the curtain a little bit and let the audience know, we've already kept you way longer than we asked you to stay, and I don't want you to miss any classes that you may have coming up, anything like that. Do you have a couple more minutes left to talk about this new report on Canada and China? Can I put that in front of you? I just wanted to get to it. So this may have been flying under the radar for some folks over the weekend, but there is a new report out. The expert group has put it out, the expert group on Canada-U.S. relations, and they basically say that Canada should adopt what they're describing as a selective engagement strategy to manage dealings with China. A lot of talk about China for obvious reasons these days that could reap more benefits from the authoritarian state while avoiding entanglement in this rising rivalry between Washington and Beijing. So it basically says, like, Canada can't fully trust China, but we can't afford to ignore it. So in real life, like, what does that balancing act actually look like in your mind?
I have no idea, because now we are in such a tricky position where we have to deal with whatever's going on in the States, and like getting greater access to the Chinese market is objectively going to be good for Canadian producers and Canadian businesses. But like at the same time, like, you know, our kind of understanding of what trade was with China is changed. Like, we're not going to democratize China through increased trade anymore, right? And we know that China has recently levied tariffs of their own against our canola, right, or some of our agricultural export products into Chinese markets, because we're not giving them equal access to our markets, right? So it's like, if we want to go into the Chinese markets, it's kind of like the States, I suppose. We do need to be looking for some concessions, particularly, in my opinion, things like renewable energies, but like electric vehicles, right? Chinese are making really good, cheap electric vehicles that we don't have access to because we tariff, I want to swear, but because we tariff them extremely high.
You can swear as much as you want, Doc.
Fantastic. So we tariff the shit out of them, right?
Yeah.
So like the problem here is that like we need to kind of try and negotiate our access to the Chinese markets while allowing them access to our markets, but also we need to be careful about the extent to which we give them access to our markets for security reasons, for their kind of wolf warrior diplomacy, and the kind of pretty muscular kind of foreign policy that they've been taking, not just in Asia, but also like in kind of North America as well.
Right on. Hey, man, I'm already looking forward to our next conversation. Grateful to have you joining the team at Athabasca University. But I will say this, I was unaware that you have moved to Strathern. You're only 10 minutes from our studio in the historic Mercer Warehouse in downtown Edmonton. So the next time we talk, we'll get you right here in studio with us, Alex.
Let's do it.
Hey, thanks for doing this. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. A lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it. That's Dr. Alex Rivard, one of the newest faculty members at Athabasca University, in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. I'm not just saying this because he's probably still on the Zoom call and can still hear me, but I really like the way that guy rolls. He comes like that.
You like the cut of his jib?
I like the cut of his jib. But like people in the chat are saying like, oh, he's credible. Wow, he's well researched. Wow, he's articulate. And you know what I really like, to be honest, is when somebody, like, we need more of this these days. And I'm actually I should be saying this into the mirror every morning. We need fewer hot takes. Like if somebody doesn't have like an incredibly strong position on something or like a really strong opinion on something and can see something from two different sides or two different perspectives, I think it's wonderful. I mean, it's funny because guests sometimes like almost apologize for this during an interview where they go, I'm really sorry, but I kind of like, I kind of see this from two different directions. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
We need more of that in real life.
It's calming too. That's why we save our dramatic roundtables for Friday, because we know at the end of the week you let all that energy out and then you go have a nice weekend. But man, it was a banger on Friday. If you have time, go back, listen to it again. And yeah, learned a lot from him about, and I like that he comes from the perspective from Vancouver, because I will say that I don't think it's a NIMBY thing with the infill, but I do feel it's a thing where like some people are trying to keep the suburbs inside the ring road around Edmonton, at least in kind of a time capsule, Ryan. And it's just not going to happen.
Fair way to put it.
It's just not going to happen. Look, Edmonton is going to be a bustling metropolis. It's a destination right now for sports, entertainment, industry, arts, culture. It's growing. It's not Toronto, it's not Vancouver, it's not Montreal, but it's going to be if not in 10 years, 20 years, 30, it's going to be there eventually. So that's the point I agreed with on Harmon. Trying to put a pause, trying to stop things, trying to encapsulate things in a time bubble is not going to solve this problem. Do we need to talk about, how to build infill so it complements the character of a neighborhood? Maybe. Yeah, I think we should have that discussion. I think Edmontons are definitely, from the polling we see on our live chat today, definitely split down the middle. But in general, I have fallen, and that's over the last few months where I've been listening to people on both sides of the issue, is I think we should build up more than we should build out. I would rather see density inside the ring road than see sprawling suburbs just go out and out and out forever. And Ryan, I had to go look up stuff over the weekend. Jenny was saying, people are worried about the value of their home. Well, the city's done assessments, and this is nothing against Jenny. I love Jenny, but they've done a decade of research over 10 years since they've been doing this infill that a lot of people call, and I'll put it in quotation marks, aggressive. And the value of homes has not really gone down.
Hang on a second, though.
Due to infill.
Put up that photo of Terry's home for the podcast. We'll try to describe it. You know the one I'm talking about with the two, like the main photo.
Yeah.
And this is the one that we were showing people this weekend, and this one blew my mind. I hadn't seen it during the episode, but look at this. So this is like someone's family home.
Sure.
With these two massive developments on both sides. You can't tell me that Terry could sell his home for what he bought it for with that next to him. Like, there's no way.
Well, I think that lot he could cash out for sure to a developer.
Well, okay, but...
And we're looking at, how old is this home, Ryan?
Well,
how long is this home viable for?
Terry just put $150,000 into renovating the home.
Okay. And I understand his position. What I'm saying is, the research that the city has done in a decade shows that the majority of homes in and around this infill have not lost value.
And also people have lost faith in the city. Right?
Sure.
So if we're saying, and again, we're just going rat-a-tat-tat here back and forth, but you can see, the city can say, well, we have our polling, and based on that polling, we formed our opinions on this. And then people say, well, we don't trust this council to deliver on this. This is why this got particularly interesting in our roundtable with Harmon and Jenny, is because the next city council, to a certain degree, could rise or fall. The councillors could lose their jobs based on this issue and this issue alone.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But again, like you said, I mean, you put this unofficial and scientific poll up right now, and it's what is it, 56-44?
That's exactly 50-50
it's pretty
right
close.
now. Right now it's 50-50.
It's pretty close.
And all I was saying is that the density, like I said, inside the ring road for sure, it's going to go up. That's how it is. Alberta is calling, and now they're coming here. And this is a land of opportunity, and it's going to happen. So I just, I looked up the research. That's why I put it in the short too, was to show that the majority, and this isn't polling, it was research that showed that in a lot of cases, it actually increased home value. Definitely the lot value. You could cash in and move outside the ring road and get a nice home, in a farther away suburb. I'm not saying that is the answer, get all the families who have invested in their home out of that dense area. But also when he talked about the places in Mill Woods, for example, that's a place with aggressive infill that has seen taxes go down because more people, once a community is built with single family homes, there's no There's no more people moving into that
No
area.
one's taxes are going down, though.
Well, when more people pay taxes in an area, the taxes must go down.
Well,
if more people are paying
the only
into
way
the
your
pot,
property taxes go down is if your assessed value goes down. So you don't want, I mean, you want your property taxes to go down if you're not trying to sell it anytime soon, but you want to pay more property taxes if you're getting ready to sell. You know what I mean? Like if your property taxes go down, unless the city's
taxes in
the
general,
mill rate,
do they
right?
not go down if more people are paying in the pot in a community? No, not at all.
We would hope so. I mean, if a city, like let's say if a mayoral candidate says they're going to, like Michael Walters came on, for example. I'm not endorsing any mayoral candidates, by the way, just so everybody knows. We're getting a lot of emails, people asking if I'm endorsing a candidate. I'm not. But Michael Walters came on and said that he believes he can drop property taxes. We got into remember the conversation we got into on the mill rate the other day and everything. We want everybody to better understand kind of how this goes. But everybody promises you can drop taxes, but right now Edmonton in particular is in serious trouble. You remember Aaron Paquette came on last week? By the way, I don't know that there's a more liked elected representative in the province than Aaron Paquette. I'm serious. We got feedback from people. We got these emails. There's a lot of people that write emails and say, Paquette's my counselor. I love him. He's the best, whatever. And I kind of go, yeah, kind of boring. The emails that really resonate with me are the people that are like, I don't think that I see eye to eye with Aaron Paquette on anything, but boy, is that guy remarkable. Those are the emails where I go, wow, that guy really resonated. And he came on with his plan to fix Edmonton last week and presented those numbers. Calgary has 90% of the people, basically people using the services are paying property taxes in Calgary. Edmonton at 70%. And this is where everybody kind of gets their backs up in Spruce Grove, Stony Plain, Fort Saskatchewan, Leduc, Strathcona County, et cetera, right? Because you start to think we're coming, they're going to come for us, they're going to annex us, they're going to try to put in toll roads. That's not the idea. But Aaron Paquette kind of did a deep dive into how mill rates, basically how it all factors into what you're paying, like what Johnny's saying. You feel like your property taxes are going up, you need your property taxes to go down, and Paquette has that plan. And we heard from people, including, unfortunately, it was a little bit on our roundtable on Friday. Catherine O'Neill was talking about it, and then a little bit after the fact and off camera. But she was basically saying, that's a compelling vision that he presented. It's 3 pillars. It's greenfield, downtown, and industrial parks. And you can check out that episode if you want. If you want to do a bit of a deep dive, I think Paquette's plan is very interesting, and you heard it here first again on Real Talk. In our live chat, Ms. Katie basically says people are just so entitled. Everybody's got to have their own bedroom. The primary bedroom has to have an ensuite. You got to have a powder room, another full bath. She says, I grew up 6 people in a 3-bedroom, 1 bath. I've shared that story before. Our family, we're in a 110-year-old house with 1 bathroom. I was kind of soft complaining about it a little bit to my dad, saying we got to get this figured out. My dad says, well, it's obviously worked for families for 100 years. Gave me a bit of a perspective check there. Erica says, I just hate the argument that it's somehow elitist to be concerned about your property value. She says that's something that regular people worry about, not elites, right? Some of you are talking about how David Eby lives in Point Grey in Vancouver. Is that true? I had no idea. One of Vancouver's most exclusive neighborhoods. Vamp Fashion says, I live in Strathern. The infill houses are well designed, but some are asinine. Says the whole neighborhood's supposed to be getting 4 big towers, new low-rise. And along the drive, mansions spring up. That's the thing, Strathern Drive. Not to get too into the weeds on this, but Strathern Drive is easily one of the most coveted drives for affluent property owners, for affluent Edmontonians in the city. Strathern Drive, the front of the houses look onto the river valley and look north to the legislature and to downtown. It's a beautiful area. So you get the houses with the big rooftop patios and that sort of, in Edmonton dollars, 1.5 to $4.5 million on Strathern Drive. But you've also got, what's particularly interesting about this is that the Valley Line LRT is also running through Strathern. This new LRT that basically took forever to get built, it's now running right through Strathern. That's why a lot of you can't get your Ralph's Fried Chicken at the original location anymore, because a lot of the businesses were displaced. So they're building a lot of density in Strathern. So where Dr. Rivard moved and where he's talking to us from in his new basement studio, it's actually kind of a perfect location for someone to be sharing or at least forming an opinion on how they feel about that infill. So pretty interesting stuff. Of course, presented by California Closets, we stream on all the different social media platforms every morning. So you can watch us live on LinkedIn. You can watch us live on Instagram, TikTok. Darren Cunney is watching us on Facebook this morning. And he chimes in with this comment. He says one word. He says Blatchford. Blatchford, of course, Darren's talking. We've discussed it on the show before. This is the former grounds of the municipal airport in Edmonton. Steve Mandel closed it down when he was mayor. And the idea has been, under Mandel, and then Don Iveson in a big way. And then this mayor is we haven't heard a lot about Blatchford. But basically the idea of Blatchford was that they were supposed to be doing like the most forward-thinking, the most technologically advanced solutions to waste management and heating and power and building density. It's 3 minutes out of downtown. It's right across the street from major retail. It's a no-brainer. And for whatever reason, it has languished. It's basically sat there. I know that there are some people that are finally moving into their homes in Blatchford, but if you drop by, if I told you that they broke ground in Blatchford 2 weeks ago, you would believe me. Put it that way. Still earth movers everywhere. And Carney says one word, Blatchford. He says if you want density close to downtown and schools, why not give massive incentives to build out the area that's currently using like 3% of its land? It says you don't need to build 16 plexes in Crestwood when you have hundreds of acres unused. You're living like when you're out in the big suburban neighborhoods, though, you're probably not seeing like infill. Like I understand where Harmon was coming from and how that got kind of contentious. Because when you're talking in suburban neighborhoods, it's not like people are knocking down 7-year-old homes to build 8 plexes next door, right? Like the context does matter. People know what they see where they live.
Sure.
And I think that's a big part of what he was saying there.
Yeah. But it's not lost on me that I'm just trying to go through what I see was talked about in the short, and it doesn't seem to add up. Like when he was talking about Mill Woods, like that's a place where it's forced the city to add infrastructure. We see that with the LRT expansion. Yeah. We see it with more green spaces. I mean, if you've driven, I drive home and sometimes I have to take the long way because Gateway is packed. If you've driven through Mill Woods, the roads are being expanded, walkways are being added, traffic lights, there's more businesses popping up. I mean, more people in an area is better for the local businesses around there. And yeah, fill that 3% of land you were talking about, but what happens after that? I just... and I realize we're kind of like, we're on opposite ends here because you're a homeowner and I'm a renter. And you seem to be on the side of the homeowners, Well, I'm not going to lie.
Well, what side of the homeowners? I mean, the homeowners are divided, right? Like I'm taking a nuanced opinion to this as well. But like, I don't know. I mean, I guess for me, it's here's the easy position to take on it is like everybody has an opinion until shit gets real and it happens right next door to you.
But I live in a townhouse that's actually 3 townhouses to my right is literally an apartment complex.
Yeah.
I don't find it outrageous. I don't find there's tons of people around. I mean, obviously they have underground parking at this at this apartment complex, so it's not like. But my partner parks in the garage. I park on the street. Sometimes it's hard for me to find parking. I got to park 2 blocks away, walk to my house. It's not a huge inconvenience to me, and that's in Summerside. So, I mean, no, I don't know what it's like to live in between 2 massive structures. I will say that photo right there looks pretty scary.
It's
but
tough.
At the same time, I see someone who could cash in on their lot and buy a much nicer house in the outskirts of Edmonton.
And absolutely. And you're 100% right. And even when you said like, well, Terry could just sell his lot to a developer and whatever. I mean, it's also, you got to look at like, why do people buy, like there's kind of interesting things happening right now, right? Because when we talk about houses, like when I talk about housing all the time, even when I'm talking about like, for example, beautiful new custom closet installations, what do I often say? I say, the biggest investment your family has, or the biggest investment of your life, or your most important investment. So that's how people look at that. But you'll also hear from a lot of people that'll say, like, that's not what housing's all about. And in spirit, like our housing markets have become so overheated. I'm not an economist. I'm not the expert. This is my civilian's take on this, okay? So maybe people will be able to poke holes all over it, like Swiss cheese. But I do think, like, housing is also just like, it's where you live. Like people talk about, it's not your house, it's your home. Yeah. Like it's a bit cynical. And I'm saying this to myself. Like it's a bit cynical you can't always, and I think it's unhealthy to like always look at your house as like your biggest investment. And this is like where all your money's tied up, right? Because number one, a lot of people have fought to get into a housing market when it's super heated. I've told you our story. Like, I'll share with the audience. Like we just sold a condo like 2 weeks ago, my wife and I, that's been bleeding money for 15 years. We bought it on East Jasper Avenue that when the Quarters project, I know these are all Edmonton references for our audience, but like we bought in good faith that the city was going to create this haven. They were talking about like a Venetian water canal, Johnny. Like they had visions of like the Quarters and East Jasper Avenue, like activating these spaces and turning desolate parking lots into big, beautiful towers and density on East Jasper. I've heard it before. And that's why on a meager income, when I moved to Edmonton, like, you know, we were making no money when we moved to Edmonton, trying to like hammer out careers in media as media was dying. We ponied up as best we could when the real estate market in Alberta was like heated beyond control. So it would have been like the fall into the winter of 2006 and bought a condo under the idea that this neighborhood would flourish as it saw investment, and ultimately that the condo would be worth way more than what we paid for it. We could either keep it as a revenue property and rent it out or sell it for a profit. Well, we've just sold that condo and lost $160,000 on it, including cash calls and everything else we had to put into it. Lost that money because it collapsed. And so as an investment play, that condo was a total disaster. And I would have been way better off just renting for the period of time that we lived there. You don't have this luxury of hindsight until you've already lived it. So take it for what it's worth. Yeah. And I try not to lose sleep over it. That's fine. But then you have other people that are like, well, you know, for folks that bought their houses in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, even bought their houses 15 years ago. And the houses are now worth like 3 times what they paid for them. And they're looking at maybe there's a health issue and they're going to have to enter like long-term care, or maybe they want to foot the bill for their kids post-secondary, or maybe they want to help their kids with down payments so their kids can also participate in real estate. They're looking by way of, you know, HELOCs and these home equity lines of credit, or just by selling their houses to cash in, so to speak. And so for folks like that, you know, then that's a wonderful opportunity. That's great for them.
Sure.
Not necessarily good for like the so-called, we keep saying the character of the neighborhood. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to be on the, you know, we always use it, this euphemism, but like the white picket fence, like the big backyards, right?
Yeah.
Where all the kids can play in the street and there's road hockey and barbecues and block parties and that kind of a thing. And I think some people feel, for very good reason, like the big 8-plexes, and it's nothing to do with who's going to live there. It has to do with how many people are living there. They kind of interrupt that vibe. And so that's where I think people get pushed back.
I understand that. And again, I'll just say that I'm kind of looking at the points made in the short. And the argument by Jenny was investment in your home was being lost. We see that that's not normally the case, right? And in the case of Terry there, we could see that he could cash in big and probably buy a house on the outskirts that's way nicer and way newer than that one. The other argument was that, you know, these infills that are going in are, you know, the rent's too expensive for low-income housing anyways. Well, you know, when you're renting something that's, I understand, $1,900 to $2,400 a month, yeah, that's a mortgage as well. But the people moving in there, they can't get approved for mortgages. They can't afford electricity, heat, water, waste, property taxes, maintenance of a home, paying that kind of mortgage. That's why they're moving into a rental unit, because all those bills are like a third of what they would be in a home. Yeah. So, and then the other argument was the way things look. Well, you know, and it's not to say too sad, too bad, like for you, but like the density in the area inside the ring road, it's only going to get more dense. We are a big, major, this is a place where people want to come. People want to come to Edmonton more than Calgary. And Calgary used to be the place everyone said was more beautiful.
People can't afford Calgary
had
anymore.
The better culture. Exactly. So people are coming here. So inside that ring road, it's going to get dense. It's going to go up. So it's not too sad, too bad. It could be your big payday is all I'm saying.
Calgary is more beautiful, by the way. Sorry, everybody.
Well, when he was talking about Vancouver, Dunbar area, man, that is 3 blocks from Jericho Beach. I know Vancouver well. I lived there 7 years. Incredible. Even being near the beach, there's still incredible parks, green spaces on the way. There's amazing public transit and infrastructure and local businesses and culture and art. And there's just a vibe when you live in a city. And this isn't like talking bad about Edmonton. It's just when I lived in Vancouver, Vancouver, there's a different vibe when you're walking down the street and mountains and ocean are in the background. When you can smell the ocean air, it's just a different vibe. And that's the kind of vibe you get in Calgary because you have that scenescape as well, right?
I think also Vancouver needs to preserve those parks because nobody can afford backyards.
100%.
Everybody needs to go to the parks.
But what he's talking about, what we're talking about here, that's been happening in Vancouver forever. Like you go into neighborhoods that used to be all old homes, and now they're students, and they're divided into 4.
They haven't had land.
Or there's infill.
It's
or
basically
there's
a peninsula.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm some like geology becomes a geologist. Does geography become a geographist? Oh my God. Anyway, but the point is, someone's going to write in and take issue and say, well, actually, Vancouver is not a peninsula. But you get my idea. They've got the U.S. border, they got the ocean, they got they got the Portman Bridge, and then so they've had and everybody has wanted to live there since the 1980s.
100%.
Right, and before, but like the 1980s is when Vancouver's downtown really took off.
But I had no idea what Vancouver was all about till I went there, and within 1 week I was like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah,
there's just a different feeling living there.
It's a special place, and I always say it's a wonderful place to visit. I could never afford to live there. Chelsea the Ginge says people are trying to keep Edmonton the small city it used to be, but we need to change to be sustainable. Matt says during Calgary's huge debate last year on this, as I heard a man at the hearing say, I've lived in a single detached home for 40 years. I like driving past other single detached homes on the way to mine. Interesting. And he says, and that's why he was against letting other kinds of homes in his community. That's literally the reason. Interesting. Tommy says you don't need sprawling suburbs, just build high rises on the outskirts of Edmonton. He also says basically, Tommy says never make your house permanent, be flexible and be prepared to move at a moment's notice. That's just not how everybody rolls. That's not how everybody feels, right? Chelsea says, yeah, that guy's lot is definitely worth more than the home. Dubious, I don't know where this comment's coming from, but I shared with you that Terry had invested in his home. Says $150,000 in renovation sounds like an awful financial decision. He renovated this beautiful home to be more beautiful, and then everything went sideways. How's that an awful financial decision? You don't know anything about his finances. Let's not pounce on people. People like coming to the table here, like sharing their family's experiences. And I just like, it's super easy. It's even for people like me. Like I've shared this with you before as well. And I'm being 100% honest on this. Like our family bought our current home in a heritage zone because we love that. Like it's like going to Fort Edmonton Park. Like every single house looks, for the most part, like it did 100 years ago. And it's really cool. It's a step back in time. It's like all these big elm trees, and there's no front garages, and there's no front driveways. And it's like a different vibe. And it is, I think, so important for cities to be able to preserve some of that character downtown. What's one of the biggest criticisms that Edmonton gets when we're not talking residential, although it applies to residential, but one of the biggest criticism Edmonton gets that Winnipeg doesn't, that Saskatoon doesn't, that Vancouver doesn't, is that we knocked down so many heritage commercial buildings. We knocked down so many historic treasures in our downtown over the years, right? As investment left downtown and as there were real issues. And you can't get those back. Like when they're gone, they're gone. So you can't convert, like in Vancouver, you see these like wonderful 100-plus-year-old buildings that have been converted to condos or apartments, and they're just like incredible. Look where we are right now in the historic Mercer Warehouse, right in downtown Edmonton. Thank God somebody didn't knock this thing down when they were building Ice District to put in, you know what I mean? Another parking tower or another restaurant. I mean, there's restaurants in here, incredible restaurants in here. Make sure you check them out. But thank God that there was somebody, his name's Kelly Pope, by the way, that saw potential in this and that was willing to invest in this and that has preserved this space. Like this, what are these, Johnny? These fir beams. These are like 12 by 12 beams, right? Or 14 by 14. Is that such a thing?
Yeah, you don't get that inside any kind of building
anymore. You can't get,
anymore,
like anytime anybody comes in here and walks into our studio, they walk up, they want to touch this, they want to know if this is real brick.
It's really real.
This is real red brick behind me. And on the other side of this, sometimes you might hear it in my mic, although not with Johnny's recent audio improvements, but you might hear that old historic 100-year-old freight elevator running right behind this brick wall.
Sure.
Like they walk in, they touch the wood beams, they look at it, like it blows people's minds. It's worth preserving, it's worth saving.
But
now, I'm not saying that means like every house needs
but the
to stand
density
forever.
Around this building has increased its value.
100%.
So
yeah, 100%.
You know, that's kind of what I'm getting at. And again, I'm not talking about everyone, because I'm just learning of this too, right? Like I'm listening to people's stories, I'm hearing that.
We're both learning.
And the reason I say it is because maybe I just don't, I know lots of people who own homes, but I haven't heard this debate, in my social circle. And so I'm like, is this really a thing? Is Harman right? Is this a non-issue? But it seems to be an issue. I'm not dissuading it. But what I was trying to do was come directly at what was being said in the short. So over the weekend, I was like, is this true? Are property, are people losing $150,000, $200,000 on their home from this? And the majority of the stuff I saw, the real numbers we can look at that aren't just stories from people, showed it wasn't. So, I just looked at the facts that they were throwing back and forth at each other. But I will commend Harman for, most people might have backed down in that situation, especially someone who's running for council. But for him to say, this is exactly how I feel, this is how the people I've talked to feel, because I do feel that there are people on the other side. And I'll go back to Millwoods because that is a place where LRT has expanded, the roads have been changed, the parks have got better, there's more businesses popping up because more people are moving there because there is higher density now. So am I saying that's going to work everywhere? No. Am I saying that you should be able to build 16 plexes anywhere you want? No. I think we should look at things and add to character of neighborhoods. But I will just say that even as you're talking here, I love heritage buildings as well. But I even wonder, how long is your home that you're living in viable? I know all the struggles you've gone through with upgrading and things that have gone wrong. And,
well, that comes with a 100-year-old home, right?
Yeah.
So you redo the foundation, you redo the roof, you redo the sewer line. We did that.
So at what point is it just better for you to cash out and move to somewhere where you can have your dream home? That's what I'm saying.
We have our dream home. It's just it comes with the cost. I've laughed with you before. Some of the things that people absolutely love when they come to our house, like the glass doorknobs that are 100 years old. Sometimes they come off in your hand, right?
I love those though. They remind me of my grandmother's home with the crystal or the glass.
When they work,
but they
great.
do pop off.
But you sign up for that, right? You sign up for it, and you see a lot of people it's
Harman's in the chat right now.
Oh, is he? Amazing. Well, what's he saying?
He just said thank you, Johnny. But
Harman should just join the Zoom call and we'll just bring him back on the show. Harman's obviously a dear friend of the show and a dear friend of ours, and I think that he took a risk. I don't think that we expected him to say what he said, and I think that it created one of the most important moments. I don't think that he or Jenny would mind me sharing this, but I basically sent them a text after, and after we all were able to spend some time this weekend and enjoy each other's company and friendship and obviously raise more than $1 million for the Stollery.
That's amazing.
But I said to them, I said that I think that what the two of you did in that episode of the show was so important because it showed that two smart people, two friends, can feel differently about an issue, that they can bring some fire to a respectful debate. There was no name calling. Jenny for sure was she's like, I'm pissed off at you. She told him to his face. She's like, I'm pissed off at you.
Well, I wondered why did she live in Crestwood? Was that the issue?
I won't say exactly where she lives, but she lives in a neighborhood that's impacted by this. And also I think it was,
I thought so.
It was Harman joking around, and he used the phrase downtown elites. And then he got this gleam, this glisten in his eye. But I said to them, and I mean it, and I say it to everybody that's listening right now, is that if we can set examples to the people around us, including our friends, maybe including our parents, and definitely including our kids, that people can disagree on something. They can share their opinions in a respectful way, and at the end of the day can still maintain a positive relationship while disagreeing on something. I think that is I feel like that's the bedrock of this show.
100%.
And I feel like we need so much more of that in life.
And it gets people involved.
It's not a bad thing.
I'm telling you right now, I agreed with Harman. I thought this was a non-issue. Remember weeks before we had them on, I said, if our mayoral run here falls on Infill, it's pretty damn boring because I am of the type of person that I just told you, my social circle isn't talking about this. But you know what? This debate that they had on this very show caused me to spend most of the weekend when I had downtime looking into it, reading about people's stories, trying to look up facts on whether what they were talking about was right or wrong. And that's the best thing about what happened on our show on Friday. I think it caused a lot of people to go do the research, look at it, and see that, hey, maybe people I care about are really worried about this, and maybe they're just not talking about it enough. And it does seem to be a huge issue. So,
yeah, for
but
sure.
I also just want to go back to one more thing Harman said. He's probably going to love this because he's in the chat, but big city, big problems. That's what's happening here.
Sure.
People are trying to keep, parts of Edmonton in a time capsule. And I agree with you. I love heritage buildings. I'll go to it again, the wide shot. This building is one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen.
Yep.
If this got torn down and turned into a high-rise or an extension of the JW during the Ice District expansion, I would have been hurt by that.
It would have been a real shame.
Yeah. So I understand that. We need to. But trying to put the whole thing in a moratorium and time capsule the whole city within the ring road is not the answer either.
Yeah. Jeremy Farkas, candidate for mayor in my home city of Calgary, is in our chat. What's up, Jer? Says, I live in Southwest Calgary. Says there's a $600,000 home getting torn down, replaced with 5 $750,000 luxury condos. Jeremy says, I think the blanket rezoning approach has not passed the affordability smell test for many folks. And he throws a bullseye on that one. I've seen actually a lot of people in our chat today, several people saying we need to, you can talk about density, fine, but let's not refer to this. Let's not talk about affordable housing because that's not affordable housing. You can always let us know what you think to talk@ryanjesperson.com. We are most interested in those of you for whom these topics are resonating because they're hitting you right where you live. We're basically talking about exactly what you're experiencing, and you, like Terry, want to share with us your personal experience. We want to make sure that we'll leave time in future shows so we can share your experience with the rest of the audience to help us better understand exactly what you're dealing with, exactly what your lived experience looks like. We wrap every episode, the first episode of every week, courtesy of our friends at Solar by Kuby, with a step outside the news cycle. And this one kind of betrays that tradition a little bit to let you know, because we're talking specifically about the news, but how it landed with Janine, who's a rural listener right here in our home province of Alberta to Real Talk. And Janine from just outside of Camrose sent us this note, a positive reflection, to talk@ryanjesperson.com. She says, Jespo, of course, I was paying attention to the by-election in Battle River Crowfoot really closely. She says, and I just wanted to share a bit of gratitude. She says, what struck me most isn't just the campaigns or the debates. It's the way that this by-election brought people out of their living rooms and into conversations about where our province and our country are heading. Neighbors are talking about issues at the post office, at the hockey rink, in church basements. And that kind of citizen engagement is the heartbeat of a healthy democracy. She also says, I want to commend the candidates themselves. No matter how people plan to vote, it takes real courage to put your name on a ballot. Remember 210 names on this ballot? 214, in fact. She says to knock on doors and to stand up for your vision of what's best for the community. That example matters, especially for young people who might be considering getting involved one day themselves. And here's something else I'm grateful for, says Janine. The fact that the eyes of the country, if only for a moment, we're on our corner of rural Alberta. She says that doesn't always happen, and I think it's really good for democracy when a by-election like this one sparks national attention, obviously due in large part to Pierre Poilievre's candidacy. She says it reminds everybody that every riding matters, every vote counts, and that rural voices are part of shaping Canada's future. She says, so thanks, Jespo, for keeping a spotlight on this campaign. However the results turned out, we were all better off for the conversations that it started. That from Janine in rural Alberta, who doesn't share with us, by the way, who she voted for in that by-election. I don't think it matters. I think the spirit of her comment, the spirit of her submission to positive reflections is the whole point. You can submit your positive reflection by way of email to talk@ryanjesperson.com every single week. It's proudly presented by our friends at Solar by Kuby. You can get a free solar quote today by visiting their website. That's kuby.ca, Kuby.ca. We're back at it tomorrow, and we'll look in the meantime for your comments on what you've just heard here on the show. Thanks for engaging, and we'll talk to you soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Harry Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.